My mic is muted, so Saturday morning. Welcome, everybody. My name is Carrie. We're going to be getting started here in a few minutes at the top of the hour. We're just waiting for everyone to get on board, and I wanted to make a couple of notes about some things and give away some prizes, which is always fun. So comment in the chat where you are watching from, and if you are watching over on Facebook or YouTube, you are going to want to go over to streamlineartevents.com/ that is not the right one. There we go. streamlineartevents.com/weekend. That is where you are going to be watching from. That way you are eligible for some prizes. So let's get to that. If I call your name, I want you to type "I'm here" in the chat and send me an email at winner@streamlinepublishing.com. I'm going to put that email up on the screen as well. That way you guys can see that. Just kidding, right there. So our first video today that I want to give away is our best-selling video from 2024, which feels like it was yesterday, but it was last year. Chin Chung Wei's Painting Nature. This is a wonderful video. He's got another video with us. I think it's called Spontaneous Watercolor, and it's fantastic. So our first video of Chin Chung Wei, this is going to go to Jason Tatinger of Longmont, Colorado. Jason Tatinger, if I called your name and you heard it, please type "I'm here" in the chats and then send me an email at winner@streamlinepublishing so I can get you access to your video. And our next one is also from last year. Stan Miller, this is his second video with us, Watercolor Techniques for Capturing Travel Memories. Another wonderful video. And this video is going to go to Denise Brown of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Denise Brown, congratulations. Congratulations to you and Jason. And thank you everyone for watching with us today. And another housekeeping note, if you have any technical issues during the broadcast, please refresh your browser. That's going to fix things 99% of the time. And yeah, we are going to get started here. We've got about 5 more minutes. So we're going to put some music on, get you guys going, and we will see you all very soon.
Darn it, I did it again, that mute button. Let's try it again. Good morning, everyone. It's still early here for me. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Saturday. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your schedule to watch with us. We're going to be getting started with our program here in just a minute, but I had a couple things that I wanted to share with you guys before we get started. The first is, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please head over to streamlineartevents.com/weekend. We have giveaways that we're going to be doing today, and you have to be present in our event chat in order to win those. So head over there if you want to be eligible for prizes. And for anyone who experiences any technical issues, sound or anything like that, lagging feed, refresh your browsers. That will fix things 99% of the time. And if not, don't worry, you will get a replay of this in your inbox later today. I like to give things away. So I have a couple more things that I'd like to give away today. The first one, I can't put that there. The first one is going to be Georgia Manser's new video, Vibrant Watercolor. I don't know if you know Georgia, but she's awesome. So this first video is going to go to, let's see, who's watching right now. How about Kathleen Howard from Vermont? Kathleen, you are now the proud owner of Georgia Manser's video. Congratulations. Be sure to send me an email at, let me put that up on the screen for you, winner@streamlinepublishing.com. That way we can make sure to get you access to your prizes. And okay, let's see. Our next one is going to be Richard Sneery's Watercolor Mastery. This is Light and Shadow. Bill Widehour from Little Rock. Bill Widehour, you are the owner of Richard Sneery's new video. Congratulations. Like I said, put an email in there, winner@streamlinepublishing.com, so I can get you access to your video. And head over to streamlineartevents.com/ let me get that up there. Sorry, I usually have Amandine here to help me today, and I'm trying to do it all on my own. Watch at streamlineartevents.com so that you're eligible to win prizes if you are over on that chat. So head over there if you would like to win some prizes. I want to thank you guys all so much for joining us today. Oops, sorry about that. Making lots of noises over here this morning. I just want to thank you guys all for taking time out of your Saturday to hang out with us. I guess with me, it's just me today. To watch some videos. It's always fun to learn some new and different things. I'm not a watercolor artist, but I did pick out these videos because I thought they looked really cool and I wanted to try to paint them. So we're gonna have some fun today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carrie Stober. I've been with Streamline Publishing for almost 13 years now. I wear a lot of hats here. I'm the marketing project manager. I manage the Plein Air Salon art competition. And I'm also the pastel community ambassador for Pastel Today because that's my preferred medium, the one that I love the most. And then from time to time, Eric lets me get to play host and do these kinds of events, which is always fun. So thanks for joining us. Why are we here today? We're here to learn some watercolor demos, right? And we're doing this because we've got Watercolor Live, our online event coming up in a few weeks, and we wanted to give you guys kind of a little experience, a little taste of what it's like to attend Watercolor Live and what you can expect. So we've got a couple of 1-hour demos for you, and you can either paint along or you can watch the replay and paint along later. It's up to you guys what you want to do. And then I'm going to share more about Watercolor Live later. We do have an offer for you, a special discount for you guys since you're here with me on a Saturday. And I wanted to share that today's broadcast and Watercolor Live are brought to you by American Watercolor Weekly. Editor-in-Chief Kelly Kane edits this bi-weekly now. So it comes out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's a free newsletter dedicated to all things watercolor. So you should check that out if you haven't already. And let me put that back up there. You can go to americanwatercolor.net to sign up for that. And like I said, that's a free newsletter. It comes every Tuesday and Thursday, written by Kelly, who is just amazing. She writes for Plein Air Magazine, Pastel Today. She's just awesome. So are you guys ready for this demo? Because I think it's going to be really cool. Today's demo, the first one is going to be by Hazel Soan. She is one of Britain's leading wildlife painters in watercolor, and she's going to be talking today about contrasting light and shadow while she paints some elephants. And as a reminder, these recordings were from a previous Watercolor Live event, so we don't have the artist here today to show you or to answer questions, rather. But if you do attend Watercolor Live, our artists are available during their demos to answer questions and just let you know what's going on, getting behind the scenes. So without further ado, I am going to play this video, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Hazel Soan, and I'm going to teach you about light and shade in watercolor. Light and shade is a really important aspect of painting because it's through the light and shade that we can represent three-dimensional form, space, and distance on a flat sheet of paper. Artists use terms like tone values or link them together as tonal values to describe the levels of light and shade in a color. I have chosen a couple of elephants to paint my demonstration because elephants have plenty of three-dimensional form. Let's get started on this magical world of illusion. In watercolor, we can't actually paint the light because the white paper is the light. So what we actually have to do is we have to paint around the light. We have to use tints and shades around the light to bring out the light. So we are going to start by saving the lights. And in a subject like these elephants, where they're pretty much a similar color all over, we can use a pale color underneath to tell us where we have to save the light. And so I am looking at any area which is light, and so that I can leave it as white paper right at the beginning, so I can tell my brush in the future where it can and cannot go. So I'm leaving out the tusks because they're very light. Nothing light down this leg, so it's safe. I can come all the way down, shadow across the bottom. Down the trunk, that's also dark, so I can bring this pale tint of yellow ochre down the trunk, round the tusks to bring them out. And then now we're coming up towards the top of the elephant, and the light here is from above. So this is where we're going to be leaving the white paper out of our washes. So here we have light cast on top, light, not light, shadow cast, light, lighting the top of the head there, and we're leaving out white paper, lozenges of white paper to represent the light. People often talk about artists painting the light, but in watercolor you cannot paint the light. You have to paint around the light by using tints and shades to bring out the light. Now we come on to the baby here, and again the light is catching on the top there, on the top of the ear. So this light tint enables us very quickly to see where the light is to be held and retained. And one of the secrets with watercolors, if you can retain white paper highlights, you are well on the way to successful watercolors. And don't forget, you don't need to, because of watercolor, because paintings are flat, the figures on the painting are similar to the background in the sense that the background is also flat, even though we are pretending that it is three-dimensional. And so here we're going to bring out the lights at the top of the head here with the background so that we can see both our form and our space to see whether it works. So we're going to bring out this other tusk here, or are we? No, I think this tusk can be darker than the background. So we contrast light against dark and dark against light. And you're going to hear me say that often, light against dark, dark against light. That is the motto of the watercolorist. And into these very pale washes, I'm going to start to drop some opposite colour, some cool colour. The yellow ochre is a warm colour, just while the wash is still wet, so that the colours blend. In watercolour, there's really two main techniques: the wet into wet, or the wet on dry. And the wet into wet gives you lovely soft blends, and the wet onto dry gives you hard edges. So this is just to start to see whether the light and shade in my painting is going to work. And it enables you to look all around your composition in a lovely broad fashion right at the outset, and really to see whether or not you have something that is worth continuing. Because watercolour is a transparent medium, you will often be painting colours over each other. And so here you can see with just two colours, we've already started to create the light and shade in this painting, and therefore to create both the form and a sense of space. As I bring a background behind the lighter areas, so here we have the ear is lighter than the background, all the top of the head, lighter than the background. So we can use our background washes to bring out our foreground lights. And this is what you will learn with watercolor, is that it is the contrast of light and shade that will create the strength in your watercolor. If you get the tones right, the light and shade, then you can get away with a lot. And very early on, we are already creating a sense of form. Now here, the ear is darker than the body. So to bring out the light and shade, we are darker than the body behind it. I think that's enough of our early tones. We'll let that dry and then we'll carry on. Having established the main areas of light and shade, we can now proceed to effectively colour our elephants. I'm going to use burnt sienna because here, where these elephants are, the earth is very red, so the colouring of the elephants is always similar to the colouring of the landscape because they throw so much dust over their backs. And I think we'll start. I'm right-handed, so I often work from the left to the right. And I usually use quite big brushes. I'm using a flat brush to start with because it's easier to lay large panels of your light and shade with a bigger brush right at the beginning. It stops you being sort of fiddly. And now we're looking at the general tone in relation to the whole of the subject, because light and shade in painting is not just to do with the light and shade of sunlight and shadow. It is all the relative tones, one against the other. So we have to look at our darkest darks and our lightest lights in relation to the whole. Here is the darkest. This underside is a pretty dark area of the painting. And I've got a nice safety spot here where I can stop with this useful tusk here, because it means I can do this as a separate section, which is always helpful in watercolour, to find what I call breathing places where you can safely stop. I like to work a lot wet into wet, which means I like to work the colours wet, go from light to darker colours and tones while the paint is still wet. In general, you will always build your watercolours from light to dark, but that doesn't mean you can't put in darks at the beginning, but that's just the general method of painting watercolour. And here, where the two of these creatures come together is really dark because the mother is casting shade over that lovely little baby there. Now the ear here is still darker in tone than I have it, so we can actually bring some of our burnt sienna up over there, and then I'm just taking a bit of the colour of the brush to lighten it. This is the beauty of watercolour, is that you can dilute your colours with such ease that you can very easily create your lights and shades just by using more or less water. As you see, I've added the tusks there. And where we want soft edges, keep the paint nice and dilute and where I want hard edge, bring the brush right up to it. So now I'm going to start painting into this section with deeper, darker colour. And I'm going to use some of the burnt sienna and the Prussian blue mixed together to come into this dark area under here while it's still wet. You see it's got a nice gentle blending while the paper's still wet. And I'm going to add a bit of violet into that to warm that up. So the Prussian blue and the violet together darken the burnt sienna. Come back with some burnt sienna on its own down the leg here. I haven't made this dark enough yet, so let's get much darker here. And remember, it's the darks and the lights that are bringing, it's the darks that are bringing out the lights. So this colour, now the beauty of watercolour is that water can do the blending for you. So you put the colour on and then the water in the washes will do the grading between the lights and the darks. This is the beauty of watercolour, like no other medium in that regard. Let's just take that across into the trunk where the two cross across each other. And now we bring this trunk darker, drier colour, because we don't want it to run too much. So we're making sure the drier colour is painted. And that's the reason for the sloping palette, is so that you can control the consistency of your paint. So you can see, because basically if it was wet, it would be running down the palette. But because it's dry, it's staying at the top here. And look what a lovely black we've managed to create from those two colours. Still quite damp. So nice and dry colour so that we can separate this lovely little nose shape. So familiar with the elephant. Elephant's a wonderful subject for painting tone because they have all the form and volume you could ever wish for. And they are more or less monochrome, but colourful in their monochrome, which is exactly what you want to look for in watercolours. So we bring down our shade on one side so that we are creating our form, and pull our shade from the shady side across so that we help to create all these lovely wrinkles, which are really details of shade rather than the general form. They're surface details. Now we'll shape the tusk here from the wash above. And bring some more of this burnt sienna, very pale here. In fact, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the yellow ochre up here to keep it nice and light. These lovely indentations in the top of the elephant head that we can show so simply with small brush strokes, small washes from diluted paint. I still find watercolour so amazing that it's so simple to make different shades, because just a little bit of water or a little less water. You notice that I don't go far into my pots at all, and my pots are hardly coloured with paint as yet, because I'm not really taking anything off my brush. I'm just adding a tiny bit when I dip it in. When you're watching, try and watch the colours mixed on the palette, the colours, the brush going into the water pot. All these things will help you learn how to paint. It's not just the paint arriving on the paper. In fact, that's the last thing in a sense, because it's having prepared it in the palette that counts. And I'm just basically looking at the form that this head makes, and just using slightly lighter or darker tints of colour to bring out that form. This is the beauty of watercolour. Now I think that's too strong a colour now, so let's make a slightly lighter mix. Maybe I'm now going to rinse off my brush, and I'm going to have a little bit of burnt sienna and the violet to bring us some darker, following the line. The beauty of the brush as well, the brush is a very versatile instrument, so use it to shape your brush strokes, to shape your marks. And also you can use it to lift colour back if you don't want something you've painted there. Where we want it soft, we make sure we go into wet, and where we want it hard, we go into dry. So these lovely folds, I'm going in while it's wet, so that my deep line is slightly modified as it blends into the wet paper. And likewise with the eye, so that it just blends ever so slightly with the paper, with the paint that's on the paper, with the wet damp paint that's on the paper. With each layer you apply, you are going to be adding more water, so you're going to be having more and more dilute paint, so your light and shade is going to be affected, because obviously the more water, the lighter your tint, the less water, the darker your tint. Now we come round to this ear, and actually look, there's a lovely, almost a little edge to this ear. Little dark edge, maybe not quite as dark as that. Everything in painting, everything in painting is relative, but particularly the tones. You are setting lights against darks, darks against lights, and try and think of it, rather than dark against light, think of it as darker than, lighter than. In other words, you are comparing colours, shades, the shade of a colour to the colour next to it. That's what you're always looking for, the relationship between the lights and the darks. Now I think we'll have that dark against the background. Also, by limiting the number of colours and letting them mix and blend on the paper, it makes it easier for you to see the lights and darks, to control, I should say, the lights and darks. So here we've just got the four colours. I'll come back to some yellow ochre here. Ooh, not so strong as that. Oh. Maybe not, maybe back to the burnt sienna. I think I would like that all darker than the landscape there, actually. And then we'll keep that landscape behind. Here we bring out the top of the head by a tone that's slightly darker. We bring out the top of that ear by a tone that's slightly darker. We bring out the change of plane here by a tone that's slightly darker. I would like some pure violet here. Just a little bit in here while it's wet, and then a little bit down here. And you see I'm just brushing it gently onto the paper, letting it blend, creating these creases in the ear. It's just this slightly darker shade. And letting the colours do their own grading. The beauty of watercolour is this grading of colour, this natural grading of the tone, so that your light and shade is to some extent done for you. I think the front half of that elephant is done, and now we want this edge to be dry before we paint here, so we'll let that dry. You know what, we can get on with the baby while we are waiting for that to dry. And I'm just going to clean up my palette a bit so that I make sure my blends stay nice and clean. Keep the dark tone there. I'm a great believer in using your colours as pure as possible, not necessarily unmixed, but as clean as possible, so that you maximise the colour in your painting. You can always dull a watercolour down, but you can't rekindle the light so easily. Right, now with the baby is a smaller area, so I'm using a smaller brush and going again in a similar fashion with my burnt sienna first, bringing out lights against dark by a darker wash. And I think actually I can go over all this front part with the burnt sienna. I love the little light on the front of the toes there, and not forgetting the shadows underneath, all part of the same surface of watercolour. Quite a tangle of legs in here, isn't it? But the way we can bring them out one from the other is by the use of light and shade. One of the important things in watercolour is when you find nice little gaps, see this gap of light here, that gap of light there, those are important things in watercolour because they create the contrasts that enable us to read the paper. We can enrich that burnt sienna a bit up here. And we want to make sure this lovely bulky body remains rounded, so we don't want any really hard edges. The beauty of elephants is that they are so sort of, what's the word, textured, is that, you know, this is an ideal subject matter for you not having to worry about the edges of your washes. Now let's see where the light is on there, on the top of that little trunk, and coming round there, these lovely elephant ears. I try to use a brush that is the size of the widest area I'm going to paint. So here I've gone down, I was using a flat brush and a size 10 here. Now I'm down to a size 8 because these legs are thinner and I want to be able to press my brush down to deliver the paint that's on it. So don't use too small a brush because you'll make your life difficult. Now here we've got a light background, so we definitely want this back darker than the background, but lighter than down here where it's falling into shade. So always think logically about where your light is coming from and what is the likely situation, because sometimes you can't always see. It's amazing how actually tone can be deceptive. So just think, okay, if the light's from above, then this area down here has to be darker, whether it looks like it or not. And the beauty with this transparent medium is that once we've got those edges, we can now also paint our tint over to colour the little Ellie, but maintaining those edges. Now we're going with our darker colour. I'm going to start with the violet and the burnt sienna mixed together. Bringing out the underside of that ear, bringing out the underside here, and so we're creating the bulk of this body by this darker colour here. And we can hint, look under there, that little bit of foot under there, the beauty of just a touch of dark paint. And the colours do their own blending in watercolour because of the damp paint. It's magic, isn't it? I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Pick a blue. When you see, now I'm sure you'll, as you learn more and more about painting, you'll begin to understand that there's not only lights and darks, there's also cool and warmths. But basically the bluer colours are the cooler colours, and here we've got a darker colour behind, so I'm making it just a bit bluer, just so it goes behind there. Our little tangle of trunk and legs can be brought out by our light and dark tones. You'll notice I've got 3 pots of water. One I like to keep completely clean the whole time, so that I always have the option of picking up really clean watercolour if I need it. And then one of them gets really dirty as everything gets rinsed out, and then one of them stays mid dirty. And obviously if that does get too dirty, then I usually go and empty it out and put new water in, because I always want to keep one completely clean. That's why I have small pots, so that I don't have to carry too much water. When you look at the baby, you can see how subtle tonal changes are. And this is what is so exciting in watercolour. It's because we can build in little increments, as well as large dark washes and strong colours, because we can also do small increments. We can bring out those tiny, subtle changes of light and dark, or these strong exchanges of light and dark, like we have here. And then, having applied the dark at the darkest point, we can then take the colour off our brush and we can use that paint as a reservoir to bring it up round the elephant. Again, using the power of blending and water to create our light and shade, our gradation in our shades. Now I want that really clean bit of yellow ochre there, so I cleaned off my brush because it wasn't clean enough. As I want to tint the top here, but I want to keep it lighter than the background. So I'm taking it over the background at the same time as I tint the light. Now let's come back down to our baby and get into these really dark darks. Quite dry colour. Right in here is our real dark dark. Under here. And then this area between the mother and baby. These proximity shadows, as they're called, where things meet, are very important in watercolour, and they create the relationships of touching items. Now we're coming round this little trunk. Not such strong colour. You can see how subtle tonal differences are. See, this leg here is darker than that one behind. Even though that one behind is dark, this one is darker still against it. And it's always those relative tones. So never think of a leg as darker. Think of that section of the leg is darker. Because at some point, for example, just here, this is lighter than the one next to it. And because light changes according to the effect of light, I should say, changes according to the surface that it's on, the direction of the surface, the angle of the surface it's on, it's going to affect different areas differently. So you've got to really observe where your lights and darks are and not presume that they are what you might think they are without looking. Now we come and get this area where the eye is indented, so we can go with a bit darker watercolour. And it's indented in the ear, so a bit darker watercolour. And you see how we're building it up from light to dark, which is the classic way of building watercolours. And this is a perfect subject, because really you can't go wrong with your colouring. It doesn't really matter which colours you use where, they'll all eventually end up making the sort of browny grey of the elephant. In this case it is a browny elephant because the landscape is that colouring. Keeping that light on the top of the head there, and now we go in with our little eye. And our creases across this trunk. And if they're a bit strong, I think those are a little, maybe not, maybe no, because I think we can actually bring a bit more of this colour down, a bit more of the burnt sienna down, because it's actually quite dark in there, isn't it? A bit more of the violet. By picking your sort of colours to blend together and let the blending happen on the paper, you'll end up with much more colourful paintings than if you mix all the colours beforehand. Let it, blend on the paper. I'm a great believer in letting the colours blend on the paper. Now we've got to bring out the underside of this lovely wiggly ear here with the darker colour behind it, and suddenly the edge is made. And we can create the crease of the back leg here, darker tone down the back. Maybe a little bit of just the pure blue. Let's get that nice and clean. Down the back here. See the darkness there. And again, I think we can re-edge this as it gets drier now to get that leg really coming up. There's this is the darkest point just in there, isn't it? So we just push our little bit of dark in. And if you dab your colour in at the darkest point and let it flow out, it will then be in the right consistency for creating the right, what's the word, modelling. Now, I think we just want to build this part. We'll just wait for this area to dry. I took the opportunity to clear some space on my palette, and now we can come back in with this front leg here, and I think a little bit more of the burnt sienna. The beauty with painting is that the actual tones do not have to be the same as the tones in real life, or indeed in the photograph in this case. They only have to work with each other in the painting. So you'll often find that photographs, if you work from photographs at all, you'll find that they often show shadows as very black. But if you were there painting from life, you would see that the shadows weren't so black, because our eyes see much more than the camera sees. So basically, just bear that in mind if your reference is a photograph. You don't need to make your darks too dark. They just have to be darker than. Everything is relative in terms of tone. Now I'm dropping in some of this violet into here to create the front of this leg. This is quite dark here where these wrinkles are. And down here between the toes, they're gorgeous. What's happening with that little foot there? Yes. And now, what have we got here? We've got wrinkles, lovely wrinkles here and here. And we've got some here, but they're not so strong. You can see how wet my paper's gotten. Still doing a bit of this tinting with the violet down here. I don't want to lose too much light, but at the same time, this lower part of the leg is not as light as the top. So I think I can safely bring a bit of watercolor across here, because we don't want it to be confusing. We don't want this area to be confused with the lights between the legs. So let's bring a little bit of the watercolor across there, and we can use the yellow ochre, because that is a really nice light color, so that we slightly tint it without losing the light. Now, have we got enough around here to bring out this? I think we have. And maybe a little bit of violet. The violet and the yellow make a brown, so the violet going over the yellow helps with making the brown. Now this other tusk here, which we're going to do darker than the background, because the background is light, and so we'll use a bit of the violet to come from there, and I think I'm going to use my small brush to make the shadow. So we even this tusk, we can create some three-dimensional form by dropping in some darker tone on the underside and letting it spread upwards towards the top, make the tip a bit darker. And we'll also just tint the tusk on this side, but we haven't got much room to even show the tone here, but just so that we can see that it isn't flat. Your light and shade creates your form and your distance on this flat piece of paper. This wonderful flat piece of paper. I think we can go a little bit stronger with that to make it just a bit more three-dimensional. The stronger your contrast, the more three-dimensional it'll feel. Now we want to bring out, oh, what about the tail? The little baby's tail. And again, we can do a little line and then add a tiny bit of darker underneath. They have funny little tails where the hair divides. And now we're just going to strengthen our landscape just a little bit behind. We're not going to do any features in the landscape, but we're just going to use it to bring out the lights and the shades on the elephant so that we can really make them feel that they have their bulk on this piece of flat paper, their three-dimensional form. So I'm going to use the Prussian blue, and this is where it's lovely to have your clean water. So we bring it out here, take the hair out of the brush there. And shaping now round behind. And where I'm going to keep this part of the ear darker than the background, so I can bring that wash over that part of the ear to make sure that darkness is maintained. And come around the top of the elephant's ear. And I'm going to just drop some hints of the idea that there's trees just into the distance. Maybe use a little bit of the violet. So that we know what kind of a landscape it is. And as they come closer towards us, a bit more yellow in the mixed, we've actually got a useful bit of warmth in that background as well, which we can bring here. Now we're still light, yes, so we can still come darker because our elephant is still lighter than the background here. Hinted our trees, and then bring that wash just around. It's already doing its job around here. We don't need to bring any more down there. Maybe just a hint of the trees again. Just by dropping tiny bits of darker tone into the wet wash, we just give the feeling that there's foliage and other things happening in this landscape. And we just let it blend. Where we want to really bring out the ear here, let's make this darker. Make sure it's definitely darker than this ear, that's nice and light, and definitely darker than this head. And then because this is a transparent medium, we are able to lay a tint for this lovely orangey earth right over everything, because as long as it's dry, if it's still wet, we can't do it. So we'll just leave little bits of, little sort of stones out of our wash. But we want to make sure that our background colour retains the same relative tone. So that's why I'm taking it across the yellow as well, which is what you can do once your paint is set. Obviously if it's wet, you can't do it. So be careful, please. Nice pool of water there, which we're going to leave as light. We go right across this tusk to make sure we stay dark. I'm actually just going to knock back a bit of that. That's too, we don't need that background to be as dark because we want the tusk to remain dark. And then maybe just a little bit in here. And although the water doesn't look very blue, we can have a little bit of blue here. And bringing out our landscape at the back. So the edge of our mud pool, just hinted it. Just hints, just using your brush to deliver little bits of paint. Create the feeling that there's 3 dimension. Let your brush dance over the paper a bit to deliver your colours. That way you get much more lively, looser watercolours. What you want to take advantage of this lovely, this lovely sort of medium that thrills as it dances across the paper. Oh, you can tell how much I love watercolour. Bit of shadow here under here, bit of shadow under there. Bring out the bit of light on the foot there with a bit of mud there. And I would say that is really all we need to show the form of an elephant using light and shade and setting it in a space using lights against darks, darks against lights. That's the power of light and shade in watercolour. Thank you for joining me. I hope I have shown you the value of light and shade in painting and its power to suggest 3-dimensional form, depth and distance. I really enjoyed painting the elephants. I hope you did too. Watercolour is an exciting journey. You're going to have fun.
And we're back. What did you guys think? That was pretty awesome. I tried to paint along and I don't think I had the right brush or the right water because it all blended together. I don't know what was going on, but that was a wonderful demo. Thank you, Hazel. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. And in the replay, you'll get to watch it again. Before we get to our next demo, I did want to share a little bit about Watercolor Live. So before we get to that, I'm going to play a little video. Awesome. So I want to share a little bit about Watercolor Live. As the video said, it is coming up January 22nd through 24th. And I want to talk a little bit about what you can expect if you're going to attend. So we have the first day, which is Tuesday, January 21st. There's going to be an Essential Techniques Day. This is completely optional, but it is a great opportunity for if you're a beginner or if you just want to get some refreshers before the event starts. There's usually a lot of useful information on this day, so I always enjoy the first day and recommend you guys attend to just kind of get you prepped for what you're going to get for the full week. And then we've got 3 days of demos from over 20 watercolor artists. That'll be Wednesday through Friday. And like this event, you can prepare ahead with the materials list and paint along, or just watch live, take notes, and paint along later. The difference is that during the live events, the artists are available to answer questions in the chat. So if you want to know what kind of brush they're using or the dimensions of their paper, they're available to answer those questions for you. We also have optional breakout rooms, and this is a chance for you to go into a room. It's kind of like Zoom, where you just sit around a table and chat, get to know each other. You get to meet other watercolor artists from around the country and around the world and chat about what you learned for that day and just get to know people. And we've actually had people who have met in a virtual breakout room and then ended up meeting in real life to go and paint together, which I think is really cool. We also have at the end of each day a paint along cocktail hour. This is via Zoom, and we all get on there. We're all painting the same reference image together, and we're all on Zoom just hanging out, chatting with the other attendees. Sometimes we have guest artists who come in. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great time to just kind of hang out and just chill at the end of the day and kind of decompress and talk about what you've learned. And last but not least, we have discounts on art supplies, which who does not love art supplies? I know that I do. So it's a great opportunity to get some good discounts on those from some of your favorite vendors. I want to show you the world-class faculty that we have for this event, and I do apologize because I will probably mispronounce some of these names. Harsh Agrawal, David Becker, Bjorn Bernstrom, Sherry Blaukoff, Alvaro Castagnet, Frank Eber, Kelly Eddington, Angela Fair, Sean Freelou, Ji Gao, Janine Hilton, Catherine Hillis, Kim Johnson-Necht, Kathleen Lanzoni, Georgia Manser, Tim Oliver, Emily Olson, Shelley Pryor, Thomas W. Schauler, David Stickle, Sandra Stroshine, Sebastian Tommen. So a lot of great artists in there, and I'm super excited. Like I said, I don't paint watercolor often, and so I'm really excited to learn from some of these because I watched an art school live with Shelley Pryor, and watching her paint glass was really cool. So I'm excited for that. And since you guys are spending your Saturday with me, we have a special offer for you. When you buy a ticket to Watercolor Live, you are also going to get a ticket to Essential Techniques Day as a bonus. So you're paying $397 and you're going to get a general ticket and an Essential Techniques Day ticket as well. Instead of paying $11.94, you're paying $397. And we've got 3 different ticket options. So general, you get 7 days of replay access, and a premier ticket, which is our most popular, you get 60 days of replay access. And with VIP, you get a full 365 days of replay access. So if you are interested, we are going to put that link up on the video player, right underneath the video player. You're going to be able to see that link, and I can put that up on the screen as well. And if you have if you sign up in the next hour, we have some bonus videos for you. These are really cool. So we've got Mario Robinson, Chin Chung Wei, different than the video I gave away earlier today, Susan Blackwood, Jansen Chow, Brenda Swenson, Tim Oliver and Richard Sneary did a combined demo, Michelle Usabelli, and Joseph Zabukvich, who's actually going to be doing our pre-convention workshop at PACE next year. So if you sign up within the next hour, you get all of those videos free, total value of over $1,000, which is awesome. And if you can pay by credit card, PayPal. If you want to do Shop Pay and do payment plan, you have that option as well. So we're going to put that link up on the screen, watercolorlive.com/weekend. Go there now if you would like to sign up. And then for those of you who might still be on the fence, I had a couple of things that I wanted to share with you. First is, if it's not within your budget, certainly do not do it. We do not want anyone to spend money that they should not be spending. We don't want you to stretch beyond your means. So definitely don't do it if you're not able to do it. However, if you if you are someone who really does want to improve your work, I really encourage you to take the leap. We've been doing this a long time, and one thing that we found is that a mixture of inspiration, instruction, and experiences are what make for a well-rounded artistic journey. And we've heard since launching these events in 2020 that these events like Watercolor Live, Planner Live, they are a perfect combination of these things and have really made a difference for artists. And one thing I love about Eric, who's the CEO of Streamline and the founder, is that he loves artists and wants everyone to be satisfied. So we have a 100% money back guarantee. If you attend the first day of Watercolor Live and you're like, this is not for me, it's not what I thought it was going to be, just let us know and we're going to give you 100% of your money back. So there's definitely no risk there. And third is that I have been painting for just over 10 years, and I did not improve a lot during that time. But 2 years ago, I went to the Planner Convention in Denver and learned a couple things, and I came back and actually put into practice the things that I was learning and realized, who knew you can actually get better quicker when you put into practice the things that you're learning. So it's really good to actually take the things that you're learning to heart and actually practice them and just get moving with those things. One of my favorite artists is Alan Picard, and I wanted to be able to paint like him, but I refused to spend money on a workshop because for me, I feel selfish spending money on myself. I have no problem spending money on my kids, my family, or anything, but spending it on me just doesn't seem right. My husband finally did it for me and got it for me as a gift, and it was awesome. And being able to go in depth with an artist and just being able to, even watch a 1-hour demo with them and then practice right afterwards, it was life-changing for me. Like, it really does, you can see an improvement in my artwork. So I really encourage you to be a little selfish sometimes. If improving your artwork is really something that you want to do, I encourage you to do it, to take that leap. And Watercolor Live is awesome because you get to learn from 20 different artists in one event. Where else do you get to do that? So it's really awesome that you get to see so many different techniques and just learn from so many wonderful artists. So that's my spiel. I really encourage you guys to come. It's such a wonderful opportunity. We're going to drop that link in the chat. It's on the screen as well. We're going to give you guys a couple minutes to sign up, go get a snack, use a bathroom break, and then we're going to be back in about 5 minutes to watch Alex's demo. So we will see you guys soon. Okay, and we're back. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. And do you guys have any questions about anything related to either Hazel, Soan? I can try to answer some questions. Or if you've got any questions about Watercolor Live, anything like that, please drop those in the chat. I'll do a little Q&A afterwards, after we get through Alex's demo. A couple that I did want to address is if you are already signed up for Watercolor Live, you already have these bonus videos. You just need to log into the replay website and you'll be able to access those. And then if you have any questions about a ticket you've already purchased, you can reach out to help@streamlinepublishing.com and we'll drop that in the chat as well. So without further ado, we're going to get to Alex. And I didn't realize that when I picked these demos, they were both international artists, but go UK. Actually, I think Alex lives in Paris now. But I really liked these paintings. I thought they would be really cool. So I want to go ahead and get you guys started with Alex. So let's head over there.
Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're having a really good Watercolor Live so far. I know I am. It's a pretty incredible lineup of talent and I'm honored to be a part of it this year. My name is Alex Hillkurtz. I'm a watercolor artist living in Paris. I grew up in California, but for the last 7 or 8 years I've been living and painting in Paris. I do primarily urban architecture, architectural scenes, urban scenes. Because I love the way this city looks. I sort of came into my own as a painter, I think because of living in this city. It's so picturesque. Every street corner has a story to tell. And it's so different from where I grew up in California. So I love the richness of these details, these kind of old world buildings, narrow streets, and of course the cafes. So I am going to demonstrate for you today my technique. I have a nice sort of corner cafe picked out that I'll show you. I'll kind of lead you through my process of how I approach depicting or translating a scene like this. I do love kind of the forms of all these buildings, the shapes of everything, the perspective. We'll talk about perspective a little bit. But I love the light of this city. People talk about the light of Paris, and I think it is unique. I think every city, certainly every city I visit, definitely has its own personality. Its own sort of color palette. And that can be one of the challenges of painting when you're traveling, is to sort of get your head around what it is you're seeing and try to get to know the place where you find yourself. For me, Paris is that way. It definitely has its own unique personality. And the light is pretty unique. I love the way the light sort of defines the forms of these buildings, kind of wraps around things, shows you little corners and balconies and inset windows and things. And there's just a lot of information. There's a lot of detail that can be found, in these great sort of light and shadow areas on a building. This is a printout of the scene that I'll be painting for you today. It's got a lot of what I love about sort of translating a scene like this into a painting. It's got a lot of depth. I think depth is one of those things that's particularly tricky to translate, taking a three-dimensional object and translating it onto a two-dimensional page. But we've got some great sort of linear perspective with these avenues, these streets, some atmospheric perspective as well. It's a fairly monochromatic, or not monochromatic, but it's a fairly limited color palette. And then there's this pop of color. I think I love the red awnings. We're going to be doing a blue one this afternoon just to change it up. Feel free to make it whatever color you like. But this particular view gives us a lot of opportunity to play with the light, the shadow, kind of reflected light bouncing up underneath some of those balconies. Just some, gives us a lot of texture that we can really depict nicely in our painting. So let me turn the camera around and we'll get started. Okay, so here we go. I have already sketched in my pencil sketch just to save a little bit of time, and sometimes this doesn't show up on camera that well, though this one is looking pretty good. I did this with a mechanical pencil with 4B lead, a pretty soft lead. I use a mechanical pencil just because I don't have to keep sharpening it every 2 minutes. So that is what I have going on. I've got my reference photo, I've got my palette, my brushes, everything's laid out. I am left-handed, so this is the way I arrange my space. I've got my palette and my brushes on the left side of my paper. I am going to use some masking tape just to tape this off. I like to do the masking tape after I've done the sketch rather than first. This gives me a chance to kind of finalize my composition. If I want to creep this left side in a little bit or have a little bit more room, I can do that at this stage. If I've pre-taped and I'm drawing inside kind of a pre-selected frame, I find that a little restrictive for me. I think this side I do want just a hint of this building on the right over here. My focal point is going to be down here where the cafe is. There's a few figures. They're in deep shadow, but it's still, I kind of want your eye to be drawn to this area. And of course, if you have issues with tape kind of tearing your paper, just kind of stick it on your jeans or on your shirt. Just pick up a little bit of lint, and then then you won't have that problem. It can just peel right off, and everything should be good. I think I want to just lower this just a hair. Yeah, somewhere in here. Okay, I'm gonna just use a spray bottle to spray my palette, the pans in my palette, just to kind of wake up these colors a little bit. Some of these I've freshly squeezed out because I know I'll be using them quite a bit. Others have been sitting in here for a little while, so they're a little dry. So just giving them a little spritz will kind of wake them up and get them ready to go. And I am going to start with the sky. There's sort of a little triangle of blue up here in the upper left, and then there's a sort of a V of clear sky here on the right. And I'll do this fairly quickly. I'm going to use cobalt blue for this, kind of a straight cobalt blue. I find that this is a really good color for this Parisian sky. Actually, I'm going to wet my page a little bit before I do this. This will help things flow a little bit. Just clean water, nice broad flat brush with clean water. And now when I add my my cobalt blue, it's going to have a nice sort of soft blend. It gets a little bit lighter as it gets toward the horizon. a little bit more saturated up in the sky. So I can come back and just maybe darken some of that. This is really going to lighten up as we go. I can just tilt my page a little bit also. There's quite a bit of water on here, so the paint is flowing around quite a bit. I'm just leaning my page on a little pencil case here, so the page is at a slight angle. So things will kind of drift down the page. Not a lot. That is mainly so that it gives me a better perspective on my page. If my page is flat on the desk, then the top of the page is a little bit further away from me than the bottom of the page, and that can just subtly affect my view, my perspective. I think while things are still pretty wet, I'm going to just get some raw sienna. This is my raw sienna. I'm using quite a bit of water. And this is a great, I also have a yellow ochre. Sometimes I throw a little bit of that in. It just has a slightly different personality. This is a great color for where the sunlight hits these buildings. I can brush this on fairly quickly. Yeah, I think I want more raw sienna. Where it meets the sky, it can bleed into that blue sky a little bit. That's perfectly acceptable. And where it's down here in the sunshine, I can just sort of scrub my brush across, keep some of that white of the page, and that'll just give a little bit of variety into this building. Gives a little bit of texture. We feel kind of the stone, the old building. Yeah, I think while I'm here, I might as well kind of carry this on down the street a little bit. And maybe on this side as well. This is actually bright sunlight on this side over here. But I just, yeah, that feels pretty good. I just want to get some color on the page. Let me zoom in. Let me just, so we can kind of see what I'm doing. I think while I'm here and while there's still a lot of water on this paper, I just want to get a little bit of burnt sienna and mix that in with my cobalt blue. That gets a nice even gray. Nice kind of neutral gray. A lot of the rooftops, the roof line is this really interesting sort of bluish gray color. And I like to mix that with either cobalt or ultramarine and burnt sienna. Those two make a really, just a nice gray. And I can get my reference so I can see it. I can just give myself a little stripe of darker detail going on up here. This will bleed a lot into that sky because this is still very, very wet. But this is just sort of building in a little bit of variety into these colors. You know, while I'm here and while things are still so wet, I think I'm just going to vary the color of this this raw sienna by maybe putting in a little bit of kind of a brighter orange. This is a quinacridone sienna, which is a really bright orange color. And I can just sort of splash some of that on here. Again, there's still a lot of moisture on the page, so this will kind of blend nicely and fade as well. So it's whatever goes on looks a little vibrant, but it's gonna mellow out as we carry on. So I can just have some of that. That kind of warms things up a little bit. Underneath here is very, very dark. This is all very deep, deep shadow. And right now I'm just concentrating on where the sunlight is. I think while I'm here, I'll probably do a lot of this, the street as well. That's a very kind of neutral gray. So again, I'm going to use my burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I could use cobalt. Either will work very well. And I think, let's see, what do I want? Yeah, this feels good. I just want to brush this on. Kind of take it all the way back into the distance at the end of this street. And again, this is a sort of a base color, just a very light kind of underpainting of to help kind of guide my eye as we go along. Maybe carve around some of these figures. They are still in shadow, but I might want to maintain some of the light on them. But this is feeling pretty good. This is just a nice kind of underpainting, sort of first coat. We want these colors to mingle and mix together, blend a little bit on the page. Just want to carry that building down off the page a little bit so it's not kind of standing on its own. So this feels pretty good. These are sort of mixing and mingling. My sky, the color, this warm color is sort of seeping up into the sky a little bit. I like this effect. I don't want to paint in the lines, within the lines. I don't want to be too sort of precious about things. I can be a little bit more defined in later stages as we're doing maybe shadow details or some of these windows, but for now, I really want a lot of life in this painting. I want a lot of movement. So you can see there's kind of a lot. These colors are sort of mixing and blending together very nicely. So I'm going to let this dry, or I can hit it with a hairdryer. So yeah, that's what's going to happen. All right, well, that is dry. Those colors mellow out a little bit. I think what I want to do is get this awning color. That's this kind of blue. It's this great sort of vibrant blue. It's got a little bit of aqua in it. And I'll carry that down into the street a little bit as well. So to do that, just want to clear off a little bit, make a little bit of space on my palette over here. I am going to get some phthalo blue. This is actually pretty close to what I want. That's a pretty powerful color. So let's, that might be okay. This might be nice. This might be the kind of the punch that we want. And we can also knock that down with some other, like a cobalt blue or, maybe even I wonder what burnt sienna, something warmer to kind of knock that color down a little bit and mute it a little bit. Yeah, because this is very, very, very bright, very vibrant. But it will make a nice bright punch of color where the sunlight is hitting this awning. Right in here. So I'll just define the awning here. And then where it's in the shadow, I can kind of bring that color down a little bit. I just want to rinse out my brush and just come back in with some clean water. And this will, then it gives me this nice kind of blend of this color. And I can bring this all the way down. This'll actually look pretty nice as we're, when I come in with my shadow color. You'll sort of feel this blue kind of reflecting in the street a little bit. I think I'm going to add in a touch of cobalt just to get that a little bit less sort of crazy aqua. That should be nice. I can dip in a little just clean water onto some of this just to create some kind of imperfections. I can let that color bloom a little bit. It just I kind of want to build in some of these kind of impurities. I don't want this to be such a perfect thing. But this is feeling nice. This is feeling nice. Maybe carry this over here a little bit. Again, it's sort of, it might look like a mess right now, but this will come together, I promise. I think I want to break up this edge a little bit. I'm just using a dagger brush, a thin, it's called a dagger brush because it's the bristles are sort of cut like a knife blade. It makes a great blending tool. If I just use clean water, I can come along the top edge of some of this and sort of brush it and invite that color to get sucked up onto the facade of the building a little bit. There, that's a little better. That breaks up that, breaks up the top of the awning here so it's not such a perfect line. Oops, it got really super dark, super vibrant. Just want to make sure that I've got the shape of this awning properly defined. That feels pretty good. I'll come in also and do some shadow colors. Again, this is, excuse me, this is really just the sunlit color of this awning. I'm painting this in layers, not sections. So I'm laying down a layer, maybe letting it dry, maybe going on when it's still damp, but coming over with a second layer. So I can cover up this whole shape. And once this is dry again, this is still very, very wet here. Once this is damp, I can come in and add a nice deep shadow color. So this feels pretty good. You can test if your paper is still damp, touching it lightly with the back of your hands. If it's cold to the touch, it's still a little bit damp. Don't touch your paper with your fingertips because there's some oil on your fingers and that can create little blemishes and kind of impurities that you might not want. So if you touch it with the back of your hand, you're pretty safe. This is feeling kind of room temperature to the touch, so it's still damp down here. I might want to give it just a second, but I can concentrate on other parts of my image while this is still drying. So this does look like a bit of a mess, but that is exactly where we want to be at this point. We want these colors to be blending together. You know, it's fairly harmonious. I've only used a handful of colors so far, and I'm going to stay in that world, just using, you know, I'll introduce a couple others, but we kind of want to stay in this fairly limited palette, just really playing with the kind of the differences in warm and cool. We've got some nice warm sort of building under painting here. I think I want to come in now with some deep, cool colors for shadows. So there's a deep shadow. Here, let me just pull this in here. There's a deep shadow under this balcony, this first balcony, which has this great shape, and that shadow connects to the whole right-hand side of the building over here, and then carries all the way down the block. Gets lighter as we go. And then it's connected with the shadow on the street. We can see here it's a little bit cooler. There's some blue sky being reflected into this shadow. And then it carries all the way down into the foreground, the whole foreground of our image. So I think the idea is to do this all kind of at once. So we want to mix up a pretty good pool of color in order to do this. And I think I'll use a couple different brushes. I like to have a couple different brushes sort of at the ready as I'm doing this, because I do like to vary the color within my shadow. Sometimes your shadows are a little bit cooler, sometimes they're a little bit warmer. So I'll often have one brush designated for cool colors and one for warm, and that way I'm not constantly rinsing out brushes to find the color I want. I am going to mix up some ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna. This is a very classic mix that gets you a pretty even gray. I don't tend to use neutral gray. I prefer to mix my grays. I find it gives me more control over the variety. You can get some incredible grays out of tubes, but I've really found that just by mixing them myself, I can really vary the kind of the color temperature as I go in a pretty organic way. So this is a very sort of a cool gray, which might be, I might want to, yeah, this is a fairly cool gray. Generally speaking, if I make this shadow cooler, meaning a little bit more blue, my overall image will feel cold. It'll feel like maybe this is November, December, a clear day in the winter with very cold shadows. If I warm my shadows up, it'll feel more like spring or summer. I think I want to warm these shadows up, mainly because this awning is such an ice cold color. I don't want my image to look too cold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of quinacridone red. This is a very pink red. And that will sort of give this shadow an overall kind of lavender color. So I've mixed 3 colors, and now I can really sort of go to town and do some fun things. And I'll show you. I'll paint this in, and then I'll show you. I'll add in some of this bright orange as a reflective color underneath this balcony, and that'll really make things pop. But I'll start with this, this deep mix of this cool shadow color. And it's this whole, let's see, it's just this whole thing, isn't it? It's this whole, under this first balcony. This is where you just got to take a deep breath and go for it, you know, because oftentimes this can be scary. It's such a rich, saturated color. But all will be well. And then bring it over on this side of the building. And there's a lot of sort of texture on this building, indents and you know, windows are set in and other things are projecting out, so there's quite a bit of variety going on. I want to get this laid down fairly quickly. I can already tell it's not quite deep enough. I'm getting a thinner brush because I just want to hit some of these details a little bit more. Get this right down to the corner of that balcony. I've added a little bit more blue, so I can add a little bit of blue in here just to vary some of that color. And now while this is still wet, I've got this orange, and I can come in on the underneath of this balcony and just kind of push in this brighter orange color. And that's going to give me this effect, this really great effect of this reflected light bouncing, hitting this side of this building and reflecting up underneath that balcony. So that looks nice. So while I'm here with this same mixture of my shadow color, maybe put in a little bit more burnt sienna and kind of carry on down this whole side of the building. There's a nice kind of defined, there we go. Nice shadow there. And carry this on up. I can have a few little flecks of light in there, that's okay. And I could do the same thing. There are all sorts of little cornices and balconies and overhanging lines and details. I can paint in some of these with my orange to bring in some light color. I think I want to rinse out. I'm going to keep going down the street here. I'm just going to rinse out my brush a little bit because there was too much pigment in there. Maybe get a little bit more burnt sienna, just to kind of warm it up as we go down the street here, and just carry this down all the way down into the distance. Actually, I know I just warmed that up, but I want to cool it down now. But this is kind of the great thing about mixing your grays, I can just sort of tweak it one way or the other. I can have this be a little cooler, a little warmer as I go along. So this is now right at the end of the street, and I can make this much cooler, almost blue. There's just some details going on. Yeah, that feels good. And then while I'm here, I might as well, this is all going to start to connect down onto the street. This great shadow coming down the street, kind of a cast shadow from this building. And there are some paint marks on the in the street here, so I just want to get a few of those in here. It gives some nice detail. And then this can come right under this awning. I can carry on this whole, let's see, what do I want to do this? Or do I want to, no, I'm good. While this is kind of partially dry, I can push in some of this orange color just to kind of indicate where some of these balcony lines are. I'm also I'll do some of this detail over here, but I want to, while this is still damp, I want all these shadows to sort of connect with each other. So I'm going to keep going with this. I think I'll add in more blue, a little bit more ultramarine as I'm right now down onto the, getting into the foreground. I want this to be fairly cool. And there's a crosswalk here, and these are always so fun to paint because you're sort of painting what's not there, right? You just sort of block that in like that, and it works. There's another one over here. And I can get this very, very blue if I want. I can really get in some nice, you know, because it's all still very wet. These colors are really going to mix together maybe on the left side, I'll make it a little bit more slightly warmer. Maybe add in that some of that sort of rose color to make that a little bit more sort of a lavender tint to it. And then this will, let's see, I just want to get this blocked in. This is another crosswalk right here. Yeah, there we go. So that automatically, like, it already sort of feels like we've got these lines, these motion lines, drawing our eye into this, into where this cafe is. I think while I have this color, I might as well carry on and kind of just sort of find these figures in the center here. Actually, I'll keep doing that, but I want to finish up my shadow on this far left-hand side. And I think I'm going to do, just want to wet my paper a little bit. Actually, I've just made this section damp because I'm going to put in some deep shadow and I want it to have a slightly soft edge. But I've wet the paper and now it's too wet, so I want it to kind of dry, sort of partially dry. So while that is mellowing out, I'll carry on here under this cafe. And this wants to be fairly dark, so let's get a lot of blue and a lot of, yeah, here we go. So this is a lot of ultramarine, a lot of burnt sienna, almost, you know, really as dark as you can get it. And yeah, here we go. This is nice. There are some, well, here, I'll just get all this laid in and then we can figure ourselves out. So with a thinner brush, I've been using this this mop brush that's fairly, I don't remember the number, but it's a good sized mop brush. I've been doing most of this work, and I'm gonna now just reach for this smaller round brush, because the underneath of this awning, it's not straight, it's got this kind of scalloped cut to it. So I just want to you know, get some of that detail going on. And then on down the side here. Yeah, that feels better. I think I can add in more details of the shadow as we go, but this is a pretty good indication of where we want to be with it. All right, now that this over here is a little bit more dry, just want to take this, again, this shadow color and carry it over a little bit paler. Not as dark as this. We're getting a little bit further away from our center of focus, so I just want to have this be a little bit more pale. And this is a cast shadow of a building that's out of frame on the left, but it's casting a shadow over here on our building. And that feels pretty good. That kind of does the trick. It's really a matter of kind of going in bold with these shadow details. But it really does kind of tie that together. I wanted to do this fairly quickly because all this entire shadow wants to be connected to itself. It's all one piece. If I were to do it in sections, I think you would feel each section. And by doing it in one kind of fairly quick movement, it does kind of tie together. I can tell it's not dark enough. Interesting. It's gonna dry a little bit lighter. So while we've still got things going on and it's still fairly damp, I might want to just come in and really, you know, darken that up. And as long as we're still kind of damp, everything should kind of mingle and mix and work out well. I can flick a little bit of water in here to give some texture for that street. Just a few sort of flicks of clean water while your paint is sort of halfway dry. Still moist, still damp. But flicking some water in there kind of creates a little bit of these white flecks. And that could be a nice additional texture. We don't want to go overboard with sort of special effects, but you know, a few things used sparingly I think are really, really nice, and give a little bit more life to. This is also interesting. I used this French ultramarine, which is highly granulating, and so it's creating some pretty interesting sort of textures as it's drying. And I love that, you know, because this is kind of an older building, it's an older street, there's going to be a lot of different patinas, a lot of different sort of textures going on. And so we can use the paint to our advantage. And really kind of build in some of that. Just going to mix up a little bit of cobalt because I do want this to feel a little cooler. That might be enough. I really love even though I've done this shadow, this whole sort of big shape of shadow in one go, you can see how much variety of color there is in here. There's some It's mainly sort of differences in color temperature, warm versus cool. But up here, it's a little bit more of this kind of lavender color. It's a very subtle purple, whereas down here, it's a deeper blue. Over here, it's a pale kind of gray. So there's sort of subtle varieties in this as we go. I think I want to keep sort of massaging this a little bit over here. I don't want that to fade away to nothing. It's, you know, what's so great about these scenes is that there's such, these shadows are so deep and rich, they pop. And as our paint dries, it gets a little more pale, and sometimes we can lose our effect. I don't want to kind of nitpick too much because it's got some nice, the paint is sort of doing its own thing. If I you know, the more I kind of nitpick, I can sort of lose what I'm wanting. The shadow, the sun is coming from the upper left and shining kind of down on this building like this. That's why there's this cast shadow on the right hand street. Shadow is also just catching a corner of this awning. I'm going to do that in a second, but I sort of want a lot of this to be dry first. Otherwise, I'll just be pushing paint around on the page, and it won't be nice. So I think while this is all drying, I'll just concentrate on a different part of the image, and I think I'm going to switch gears and come up here to the top, the facade up here, and the face on the left. And to do that, I've got this underlying warm color already, and that's a great base coat for what I want to do, which is add these deep shadows. There's I'll show you the reference again. There's this, these details above this window here, and then they carry down the left side. They're not thick enough to be balconies, but they are these, little sort of cornices with a lot of details underneath. And those have these really deep, rich shadows. And so we can do a lot of that. Again, I think I'll use this, this thinner brush. You know, I'll probably have a couple brushes ready because I'm going to do a similar technique, cool and warm colors. So let me find another brush. Yeah, here we go. I'll just get two brushes that are about the same size as each other. And these are fairly small, thin. They give a nice point, but they're fairly small. So I can do a lot of this detail work. And I'll have one brush that will have a cool color on it and one that will have a warm color on it. And by, you know, playing with both of them, it should give me the variety I'm looking for. The trick is to remember which is which. So I think I want to come back to this. You know, I'm still using this big lake of color here, which is basically my ultramarine and my burnt sienna. Maybe get in a little cobalt. That gets a fairly cool shadow color. And then with my other brush, you know, I should have different colored brushes is what I should do, but that's okay. These are both sort of red. It's going to cause me trouble. With the other brush, I'll have this bright orange color. So that can be my reflected light. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good rule of thumb is cast shadows. In this kind of a situation, cast shadows are cool, reflected light is warm. It's not always the case. There's plenty of examples of you know, variety within that, but in this kind of a scene, that's a fairly good rule of thumb. So I'm just going to start, and again, because I'm a lefty, I'm going to start on the right-hand side and kind of move my way over to the left so that I don't smudge it with my hand. And also things will be more defined here and less defined as we go down the block, because this is moving further away from us. So I think what I want to do is just, let's see. I've got kind of a thick line here. There's some details. There's a few so I want to etch around. There's a bit of like a pediment statue face on the above this window, and then carry that over. This feels pretty good. And while I'm here, I've got my my other brush with the warm color, and I can just give a little bit of stripe or touch in some of those areas while that shadow color is still damp. And that just gives a little variety within that shadow color. So you feel, it's kind of this illusion of light sort of bouncing around, reflecting around, moving around these forms. Makes it that much more interesting and believable. There's a few kind of vertical shapes. I can smudge some of this. You know, while I'm here, I might as well kind of do this whole inside this window. There's this great deep window frame, and it's a very, very deep shadow that's in here. might want to be deeper than that. But the top of that, there is light reflecting up in there, so that kind of gives that feeling of that. This side can be much darker. Kind of all the way down to this balcony. That feels good. Maybe a few darker touches here and there. But that's kind of the idea. Sort of does this and comes down here. So and then there are some, again, the face of this building is not flat, so that gives us the opportunity to kind of vary this shadow over these windows, or you know, in between windows. And you don't have to be too precise. It's your eye really fills in these details. You know, my general line is this kind of diagonal down, sort of 45-degree angle down to the left. As long as I'm on that line, I think I'm good. I don't have to count windows or, you know, really see every little minutia of every little detail. Your eye really kind of fills that in. And I can dab that just to lift, to get that a little desaturated. As we get further down into the distance, we sort of feel that atmospheric perspective as well. So colors are a little bit more faded, a little bit more muted as we get further away from us. So the further down this page, the further to the left of the page we get, the more faded out those colors will be. And then I've just, with my second brush that I remembered had the warm color on it, I just touched in a little bit of that orange to give that effect of some light kind of bouncing up into those shadows. There is another row of these, a similar sort of cornices up high. I can do a couple of those, and then maybe something right up here. And again, with my second brush with the warm color, just to touch it, just to mix those colors on the page. And then there are a few other, like this is really, we don't want to get too noodly here because, you know, this is pretty far from our center focus. Our center focus is right in here. So anything up here, I want to be careful of how much detail I want to add. It's got to be enough that your eye sort of fills it in and you think, oh, okay, I know what's going on. But I really don't want to draw your attention up here. You know what I mean? It's not the focal point. So anything I do, I want to sort of pat down a little bit. There are some great vertical windows here. This will be nice. This kind of sells our distance. Maybe a couple up here. I'm going to come back and just get a little bit of, a lot of the buildings on this side, they actually have their shutters closed because it's a bright sunny day and those apartments are getting kind of blasted by the sun. So I think I just want to get kind of cobalt blue. Maybe brush these very lightly. If it's too much, I'm just dabbing it with a paper towel. That just lifts out a little bit of the color. And again, this is just to kind of give the impression of these windows sort of receding down the side of this building. You know, I'm not going nuts with details. I can do this, you know, almost a dry brush technique. I'm sort of holding my brush not vertical to the page, but very horizontal and flat to the page. This gives, you know, when you drag your brush over the page, it does tend to kind of scrape across the texture of that page and give a lot of these, you know, gives that sort of dry brush technique, which is kind of all we want. There's a little bit more detail in a couple of these windows. Their shutters are open, and so that you can actually see some of the depth. I'll do that in a second. But just this initial pass, you know, this can really be, you know, you're just sort of touching in some details here and there. Not a lot, not a lot, not a lot. This is still pretty damp, but maybe that's okay, because I can come in with a dark color and just add a few sort of doorways, maybe a few touches of detail here. Again, this is fairly far down the street, so it's okay if it's a little less perfect, sort of more impressionistic. Yeah, that feels better. There's this curb that just kind of comes around. That feels good. I'll add some darker details as we go. This is just the process of slowly getting darker and darker as we go. I'm kind of in the mid-tone range of things now. There are a few, I can get the same brush and just have a few kind of thin details to help define some of these windows. You know, again, you're just sort of painting the shadow. Oh, here, so there's this deep shadow that I completely ignored. That looks kind of cool. And some of these have these little vertical pieces above these windows that are interesting. So I don't want to forget those. That kind of gives a little bit of detail, like there's a lot of kind of interesting stonework happening on the side of this building. Actually, there's quite a few other horizontal lines here. Yeah, and that starts to give a little bit of definition to things. I'm really just playing with the same couple of colors. I haven't added any new colors in a while. This is still that mix of ultramarine and burnt sienna. There's a few, you know, there's still kind of some of that quinacridone red in there, cobalt as well, but it's that's kind of it. So I'm sort of playing with these handful of colors. I do want to, this is one of those windows it's got a little bit of depth to it. And this second one as well. So if you have kind of a horizontal line and then a diagonal line as it slashes down the window, that that tends to make it look like it's set back a little bit. And then again, back with my second brush with the warmer orange color, just touch that in at the top of my window. And that kind of tells us that light is coming in and bouncing up and giving this warm glow just to the top of those windows where it's sort of inset. The window is kind of inset into the facade of the building. And there's a few extra details up on top which will help us, but that feels pretty good. I'm just getting some ultramarine just to come in and get a couple of these. There's these windows right in here, these deep window panes that are right in this shadow. Maybe up here as well, I'll do the same thing. Yeah, that feels better. So you can start to see there's just, you just add these darker shades over, darker values over your shadow color. It gives more detail in the shadow, and it has the illusion of lightening the shadow because in comparison now we've added this very dark touch. And it just has the illusion of kind of lightening things up in a cool way. I just want to get a few other details within this window frame here. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So it's just, a few little details, and suddenly that window starts to have some volume to it. It has a little bit of depth. Looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to do the same thing underneath this balcony. There's these great, shoot, I don't know what these are called. Someone will help me out. I even have a dictionary of architectural terms. I'm not an architect. If there are architects in the watching, please let me know what these things are called. They're these kind of feet that hold up the bottom of a balcony. These decorative, they're not like dentelles, but I think you know what I mean. Anyway, there's just a few kind of details in there. I don't want to go crazy because there already is some nice kind of variety happening within everything. I think I want to move over into the shadow side now, and just do a couple little pieces. And again, same brush, same mix of colors, ultramarine and burnt sienna. And it's just going to give me a few, very thin kind of lines of where there are windows, or where you sort of feel maybe a shutter, or somebody has a planter box hanging off of their window, just to give some definition in the shadow on this side, on the right side of the building. And there's actually a nice kind of row of them down here. So I can just carry those down, maybe smudge it out a little bit so it doesn't look so perfect. But that really helps kind of sell this idea of perspective. We really start to feel this building receding into the distance. Maybe there are some balconies. Couple other details here and there. Down closer to the street, there are some signs, so those might be a little bit more defined, like street shop signs that are sticking out into the street. I don't want to add too much detail because this is really far away. This is actually, this section right here is the furthest away from us in this scene. So I really want to leave that fairly loose as far as details go. I think I want to just do a little bit of work on this side. There's this, the other side of the street. It is in bright sunlight. I'll bring in the reference again. This side, this is what I'm looking at right now. It's this side of the street. It's in bright sunlight, but there's some details of this, underneath these balconies that are catching some deep shadows. There's some window details. I'm not sure about that tree. And then there's a few cars and a few sort of motorcycles and scooters. I want to kind of sketch those in. I don't want to have too much attention. I want you want to feel that it's part of the city, but I don't really want to, I don't want to overload it with detail because it's really not our focal point. If I go nuts with this area, it's really going to draw your attention away from our cafe, and that's a bad thing. So I'm just using my same mixture here of this is sort of turned into this gray, gray mush. I think I want that a little darker. So I'll just get, a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit of this quinacridone red. So that starts to feel very warm, kind of a warm, cool color, a warm shadow color. And I'll just, again, there's a vanishing point, for this part of the composition, there's a vanishing point down here at the end of the street, and everything is sort of radiating out from that point. So just like these lines on the left side are converging on that point, on the right-hand side, it's going to do the same thing. So as long as we sort of have that in our minds, we should be okay. So these ones up here are very, very steep, pointing down. As we get closer to the base of our page, they'll be a little less so. And then down here at the bottom, they're really almost horizontal, because all these lines are aiming for a point that's somewhere around here. So we can sort of follow that as a guide. So again, I don't want to do too much. This is just to sort of sketch in some of this detail. Maybe there's some things happening down here, but that might be enough. That might be enough. You feel that brings a little bit of definition. I think I'll vary that color a little bit for this next building. So I've just added in a little bit of my burnt sienna into the mix, so it's a little less kind of lavender. It's a little bit more gray now. And again, just this building is sort of curved. Maybe a few vertical windows, but I don't want to. You almost can be abstract about this. I can dab that if that got a little. Yeah, it feels better. Maybe just break that up with some other bits. There's some balconies, there's some darker windows. But maybe that's enough. And that's sort of nice. It kind of pushes that into the distance a little bit, which has the illusion of pulling this into the foreground a little bit. I think I want to kind of get into the final touches a little bit. Now I'm going to switch gears, maybe use a similar brush, but really get a deep, deep color, almost black. I do have a couple blacks in my palette. I might get some of that. This is like a lamp black, but I'll mix it with some ultramarine. I'll mix it with some burnt sienna, so it's not just a flat sort of cake of color. There still will be a little bit of variety to it, and it'll kind of play nicely with what's been going on with everything else. And this will really be, you know, this row of, there's these motorcycles, so there's just some, there's a few cars, but you really only see the shadows underneath, the tires, maybe a back window. You know, your eye really fills in the details. That got a little saturated, so I can just dab it with a towel, and that just kind of gives that illusion of depth a little bit. While I've got this dark color, there's a few figures coming down the street. They're very far in the distance, but I do want to feel their presence. There are a few of these great classic kind of, oh, there's actually this kind of this stop sign here, isn't there? Or a street sign. This is another sign that's not sure what it's indicating, but it's there. And then there are these posts, which are everywhere in Paris, these great kind of make sure you don't step out into traffic kind of things. Maybe I'll define some of that. So I'm just using this very dark mixture. I'm using a very fine, come on, focus, a very fine tipped brush that tapers down into a really nice fine point. And I can use this for a lot of my fine details. There's some, just to bring some of this in focus, there's kind of the lip of this balcony does have this dark, this really dark lip to it. Like that kind of maybe does the trick. Not too much. I don't want it to look kind of cartoony, but you know, sometimes it's just enough. Just a few little. Actually, there's these interesting. Oh, those must be flower boxes from the upstairs balconies. A few things in here. You know, I do want to, before I forget, this shadow that's hitting the corner of this awning. I want to do a little bit of detail on this awning because it's a little bit flat right now. But we see how that color has really faded. It's really kind of mild now. It went on so strong, but it's really faded. So I think I want to mix up a pretty dark blue for the shadow color. And again, I'm looking at, this is the sunlight color of that blue awning, and then this is the shadow where it's in shade. It's a very deep blue. So, you know, I've got I've got a lot of what I've been using. This ultramarine blue is probably pretty great. That might be a little vibrant. I can knock it down with some burnt sienna, you guessed it. That was too much, so I'm gonna bring my blue back. But that might be it. That might be it. I wonder, I'll just hit a little bit of phthalo in there just so it's in the same world. And that feels good. Yeah, that might do the trick. So now I'm just going to, let's see, it's this. Let's see, it's this bit here, isn't it? And this is dry, so I can kind of put my hand on there. It's all of this, right? So it's under this, there's the sign for the cafe here. And then it kind of slashes across like this. Yeah, not bad, huh? That kind of did the trick. I'm gonna grab a thinner brush. Actually, I'll get my dagger brush again. This is very, very thin, this very fine point on this thing. And I'll get that same nice blue because there is a, well, there's a bit of a line down here on this side. And then there is a shadow kind of under the lip of the awning there. And some other details on as it curves around this edge of the building. Okay? Kind of this sort of thing. Maybe even a couple of these little wrinkles. That does the trick, right? Actually, this where this goes, I'm gonna dab this because, yeah, it sort of goes. It cuts across diagonally here, but it cuts down here. Okay, so that feels better. While I have that, I can actually bring that down into my shadow. That'll tie this together nicely, so that I'm not, I don't know, it just feels a little bit more kind of a natural extension of this shadow, rather than just having this weird things floating there. And there are a few other, oh, I see, there are kind of a few little details of shadows that just tell us a little bit of information, a little bit of directional. Oh, actually, I'm gonna, while I'll come back to this sort of black color, this deep, dark color, because the sign of the cafe, which sits right here, is actually black, and I'll just kind of do some of this, and this is still a little bit damp, so this might be kind of nice. And I can paint the whole shape, and I'll come back later and scrape the text in, and there's some lamps as well. There's some kind of decorative lighting going on. Yeah, that actually, that gives it some nice definition. Yeah, this is starting to come together. We've got this kind of dimensionality to this piece now. Let's see what we can do with these figures. I know they're in the shade, but I do want to at least indicate that they're, maybe kind of touch some of that, again, that orange color to indicate where a face would be, and then we can come in with, you know, maybe something really rich and dark, just to indicate sort of a figure. Maybe it's a, that kind of looks like a man and a woman together. I know that they are in shadow, but we'll give them a shadow as well, just to ground them a little bit. That's a little, it's a little too perfect, so I just want to mess that up a bit because I don't want these to, yeah, that feels okay. It's really about the details at this point. We just want to bring it into focus. There is this, this street sign here that it's got a little bit of red to it. So I just want to, this is actually a sign that says, "Don't go this way." Maybe with that same sort of rusty red. Sorry, I'm using a, what is this called? It's Deep Scarlet, which is a, oops, it's this. It's a very sort of, it's basically dark red. You can add a little bit of blue, a little bit of ultramarine to it, and it gets really nice and rich and dark. Kind of like an Indian red, but it's still transparent. So that's what I'm doing here. That's nice because this whole piece is sort of a very limited palette, and if we can just add in a few, you know, maybe there's some signs back here. Maybe there's some tail lights on a car. Just some catches of color, which could be nice. Maybe somebody has a terracotta flower pot up there on their balcony. So there's a few things that are missing. There's some very, very fine details actually. There's some banister railings and some other very thin lines. So I'm going to use this brush now, which actually has a couple different types of hair to it. It's got this nice sort of reservoir, but then a very long, thin sort of spike of longer hair. And this is great for if you want to draw power lines or tree branches. You can get really great, long, nice strokes with it. Here, I'll do some down in the street, and there's kind of, yeah, this sort of curves around. So there are a few, well, there's this banister railing here, which is very prominent. And it goes down this side of the world. I can do this with this brush. I can do this with a fine liner pen, or often a fountain pen with black or gray ink. You know, I think it's nice to kind of mix up our tools sometimes and use things that are a little unusual. This one I think feels pretty good. So I'm gonna sketch this banister in. I just want to do some verticals first. You know, I'm going to do it with a pen. I'm going to do it with a pen. So I'm just going to use a fine liner pen, very narrow, very thin pen. And I think this pen's a little bit old, so it's a little dry as well, which is good. And I'm just going to do kind of squiggles. And as long as my squiggles are somewhat symmetrical, I think your eye will read this as a banister railing. Okay? Look at that. Magic. And then same sort of thing down the side of the building. These are kind of squished with our perspective, so I just want to do this very loosely, very, very rough, because I don't want to overpower this at all. There are some, there's kind of a deep shadow here, like another doorway here. I don't want to forget that. Maybe a couple of those. That sort of leads our eye down the street in a nice way. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. There, with my same that narrow brush, there are these horizontal kind of brick, kind of stonework on the side, on the face of this building. It almost doesn't matter what color. I'm sort of just mushing a lot of these colors together. This is my, this is the cool gray that I've used. I've still got some of that dark red in there, so I mix that together. It sort of becomes this gray. That might be enough. And I just want to, there's just these horizontal, this stonework in here that really gives kind of a nice sort of detail to things. And it carries down the side of the building this way. A little bit in between these windows, but not, the further away we get, it's not very detailed at all. It just feels a little lived in now. It's a little less clean. And then really, as we get up into the into the upper floors and down the street, we really don't want to do much. But sometimes this thin brush is nice to kind of break up some of that uniformity. Okay, now as I think a final touch, well, maybe not the final touch. There's always more to do, right? I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife. And I just want to scrape away some of the paint and to get back to our white. This is a good way to add highlights without sort of resorting to gouache or I don't know. There's different gel pens that are white gel pens you can use, but this is a nice way to do something similar, but it somehow kind of keeps some of the purity of watercolor. So just wanted to emphasize a little bit of this. The sun is kind of still hitting the side of this, the corner of this balcony. There are actually lights. Let me do, in this deep shadow, there are some like decorative lights hanging down in the cafe, which are interesting. So we can see, here I'll push right in so you can see what I'm doing. There's a few in the doorway. I don't need to be too precise. Sometimes it's enough to, maybe you just feel either it's a light or there's sunlight hitting some silverware or a glass or something. But keep this a little loose, a little random. And it's just, you know, it's kind of those magic touches that really bring a piece to life. There are kind of these running lights around. It's still a little bit damp. It's best to do this with super dry paper. But yeah, there's a few little detail lights just running down in these shadows. That's kind of nice. I could sort of scratch away the name of this restaurant. Maybe I'll just say cafe. You know, and again, you don't have to, as long as it's sort of the shape of letters, you don't have to really be pedantic about spelling something out unless it's super prominent. But that might be enough, you know, and then, you know, here there's maybe some text on this awning that's, you know, something like that. And you can always go over this with paint again if that's too white, if that's too bright. Another thing, I wanted to get these, the things I don't know the name of. There are, the tips of them are just hitting the sunlight. So there's one, there's two next to each other, and then there's a couple more down here, and they're just protruding out into the light. And that, like, I mean, that makes that shadow, that part of the shadow, come alive to me. Now we can tell that, you know, this maybe is casting that shadow and this is casting that little shadow. So it just gives this depth. It just gives this little bit of added depth. You know what I mean? I can scrape a little bit, maybe the top of this banister is just catching a little bit of sunlight, especially in front of this deep window. You know, these are the things often I find that just give these little kind of punches of detail that that just bring a piece to life. You know, this is where I sort of stand back from my piece. I kind of look and see, what does it need? What's it missing? Where are my pens? You know, I'll often get a painting to this kind of a point, and I'll walk away. I'll sort of set it down, put it in a corner, and leave it overnight. It's almost like, you know, proving, you know, when you're baking bread. You got to let it rest. You got to let it sit, do its thing, come back to it the next day, and then it's clear what more it needs. It might just be one little touch of something, but you know, you've sort of been staring at it for an hour or more. And sometimes you can lose a little bit of perspective, and it's good to step away and then come back, you know, the next day or whenever. But I'll often do that. But this is feeling pretty good. You know, I'm still checking my reference. I'm still checking my reference photo. But I don't want to get too married to my reference photo. You know, maybe I've forgotten this blue in the reflection of the window. Maybe there's some other detail down the street. But at the end of the day, the painting has got to stand on its own. No one's going to be comparing your image to the reference photo. So the painting has got to be the thing. Does it work? Does it stand on its own? So let's take the tape off. Often this is the most fun part, right? The big reveal. So we can see what we've got. And this feels good to me. I feel like this one came together. We've got some nice variety in our shadows. The sunlight feels nice and warm. It just feels like a good day in Paris. So thank you. Thanks for joining me. This is fun. All right, there you have it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit. I hope I answered some questions and maybe showed you a few tricks and techniques. But yeah, it's a real pleasure to be able to share my process and some of my style with you. So have a great rest of Watercolor Live. Take care.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did watching that come to life. That was fantastic. And I didn't realize when I picked that video that it was 1 hour and 40 minutes. So you guys got a little extra time there. Thanks for hanging in with us today. And I've got 2 more prizes that I want to give away. And before I do that, though, I have one more video that I want to share with you guys. It's real quick. It'll take just 1 minute.
So it's been a fantastically wonderful, overwhelming 3 days. This is my 4th Watercolor Live, and as someone who's trying to improve my artistic skills and my professional career as an artist, this was one of the best things I can do for myself. So I just have advice for anybody who's wanting to listen. Take that class, buy that book, attend that conference. Invest in yourself. Sometimes I know it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard to spend the money. It's hard to take time off work. I had to take time off work. It's hard to take time away from your family. I get it. But unless you're willing to invest in yourself, you're not going to improve and we're not going to go anywhere. So just do it.
I agree. Just do it. It's going to be a wonderful experience. I really encourage you guys to do it. So just remember that the bonus videos expire 1 hour after this broadcast ends, which, will be in like 5-10 minutes. And then you have until Sunday to sign up and get the discount if you want to have some more time to think about it. So we have 2 more giveaways that I want to do. And before I do that, I'm going to put the little banner up here. If I call your name, type "I'm here" in the chat, and then send me an email at winner@streamlinepublishing.com so we can get you access to your video. So the video I want to give away is from Barbara Tapp. And if you do not know Barbara Tapp, you are missing out. She is the sweetest and the funniest and just most lively, energetic person. And she's just such a great treasure to be around. So this video is going to go to Betsy Nelson. Betsy, congratulations. You are now the proud owner of Barbara Tapp's video, the Barbara Tapp Watercolor Method. So congratulations, Betsy. And the last thing I want to give away is something that I have found immensely helpful in my painting, and it's these value specs. And Eric created these, there's lots of things on the market that, our red film, artists hold up to their painting to see values. And I love these because it's hands-free. You just put it on and you can look around, move it around, check it out. As a pastelist, I also use this to arrange my pastel tray so that I don't have to take a black and white photo, move stuff around, take another photo. I can just put these on and move stuff around as I need. And it's super handy, hands-free. So somebody is going to get this lovely pair of value specs, and that person is going to be, Mary Lynn Karuba. Mary Lynn Karuba, congratulations. You are the proud owner of a new pair of value specs. Make sure you send me an email at winner@streamlinepublishing.com with your address so I can get those in the mail to you. And again, I want to thank you guys all so much for sticking around with us today. We are at just over 3 hours. So thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed these demos. You got a taste of what Watercolor Live is like. So be sure to check out that URL. It's watercolorlive.com/weekend. Check that out. Definitely invest in yourself if that's something you want to grow in this year, in 2025, grow in your art. I highly encourage it. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.